I got together with some guys this week and we talked about, as men, how do we eliminate passivity in our own lives? Now, this whole conversation we had around the breakfast table was derived from a sermon that my wife and I we spoke this last week. She co-taught the message with me and we read Genesis 3 together, the original fall of man from Adam's perspective and from Eve's perspective. And it was so good, especially in my men's small group, that I wanted to share it with you men to give you some additional questions that I think you need to ask yourself. And you need to spend time maybe with some guys talking about these questions with those men in your life. Let me give you the backdrop from Genesis chapter 3. When Eve goes to eat the fruit that the serpent gives her and tempts her with this, there's one little line in scripture, and it says that she gave some to her husband who was with her, and he ate it. This is a key piece that we got to understand. Adam was with Eve when she was being tempted by the enemy. It says, who was with her. Now, if you've never thought about this before, you may have just unintentionally believed that Adam was away from Eve at the time and she was very vulnerable, all by her lonesome. The safe protector wasn't there to say anything because he's out in the fields working away. And you may have believed that, but when you read the Bible, that's not true. Contrary to popular belief, Adam is right next to her the whole time. And the problem is, God had told him, we are not to eat from this one tree. And now the enemy is coming at his wife and is talking to her about how she ought to eat it. And Adam's actually listening to the conversation and he says nothing. Therefore, he has a moment where he is present around her, but absent without saying anything. He's passive. And this right here, this moment in time, creates the environment for the fall of man, which puts the onus of responsibility back on Adam because he was the one who was originally told not to eat the fruit. He's passive. And so this conversation is, how do we eliminate passivity within ourselves as men? So some questions for you. Number one, where do you see passivity in the culture among us today? The contrast to this passive moment is that Adam runs away and he relies on himself. He sews his own clothes together because he's full of shame. And when he sews the clothes together, he wants to cover himself and he becomes reliant upon himself, independent from God, no longer depending upon God, but trying to solve and fix and cure the problem on his own. That sounds like us. And so the follow-up question is, where do you see self-reliance in the culture of manhood today? The second question is, how do you personally struggle with passivity and self-reliance in your own life? What can you do to overcome that? What can you take a next step to actually move forward and step into being present instead of passive and doing what God's called you to do? What can you do to take a next step? And then the effects of this. Maybe you feel guilt, which is an objective feeling. That's what Adam feels. Maybe you feel shame. To find out where you're feeling shame in life, it's, what do I want to try and hide? And anytime we're wanting to hide something, there's a reason for that. There's shame. There's fear. Fear is an effect of the fall and the moment of passivity. What are people going to say? Do I have what it takes? Am I full of doubt about myself? I'm afraid of a confrontation. I'm afraid of the pain. Fear. What emotion bubbles up when you think about moving out of passivity? And ask God to meet you in that place. I'm telling you, conversation that we had, a group of 9 of us guys together yesterday, was phenomenal. I had to give it to you today so that you had a little bit more content to take this message further. Come on, step up and step into what God's called you to do by eliminating passivity on your life. I know this is going to make you better. Keep on. living vivid.